Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Knitting Jungle podcast. My name is Sarah, in case you're new here, and this is a podcast where I talk about knitting, machine knitting, crochet, and sewing. So it's been several weeks since one of my more normal style videos. My last video was a 2024 recap video where I talked about every sweater that I made last year. So I have a lot to go through today. I've got some of everything. There is knitting, crochet, sewing, and machine knitting. So this should be a pretty jam-packed episode, so buckle in, grab your project, and let's get started. As always, I'll be linking all the patterns and yarn below in the description box. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe. And if you have time, be sure to go follow me over on Instagram. I'm Knitting Jungle over there. And I try to post my projects before my videos come out so you can get a little sneak peek of what's to come over there. I also wanted to thank everyone who left a comment on my last video. I have a lot of fun chatting with you in the comments over there and learning about where you're from and what you're knitting on and what other crafts you like to do. And in case you have any questions about some of the projects I'm talking about, in case I forget anything, you can just leave your question below as a comment, and I respond to all my comments, so I will get back to you. So now that that's out of the way, I think we can get started. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit today from knitting to sewing, crochet. I'm just going to try to keep things exciting, so I'm going to jump around a bit. So what I'm wearing today is the Petite Knit Monday sweater. It's just a simple raglan sweater, and I drafted my own palm tree pattern here, which I plopped right in the middle front. And I did hand knitting and machine knitting for this sweater, and I think I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, if you don't mind. So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is this whip. This is the Beatrix Cardigan by Gregoria Fibers, and I'm a little obsessed with this lately. I cast this on, I think, 8 days ago, and I've been knitting on nothing else since then, and I've been putting a lot of hours into this because it's just, this texture on this is so amazing. This cardigan is started off by knitting the back and the two saddles, these two braid sections here, flat. And I think one at a time, I've already forgotten, this was only last week. What you do is you just knit this little braided section here flat on one shoulder, and then you come here down the back side of the neck, oops, and then you knit the other saddle shoulder braid, maybe about this much. And after that, you pick up stitches for the back along the bottom back facing edge of the saddle shoulder braid, along with the back neck, and then you pick up stitches on this side of the saddle shoulder. And that way you're able to knit the entire back flat. I think there was some shaping here at the sleeve opening. And then I think you stop knitting when you get to the armpit area, I think. And then you pick up stitches for the front from the same saddle shoulder braid area here. And you knit that down with some shaping at the neckline and the sleeve area. And then once you get to the armpit area of the front sections, then you're able to combine them with the back section, and then you knit the whole body flat all the way until the end. I think that's how it worked. And here at the bottom is a 1x1 ribbing, which turned out really neatly for me this time. Sometimes I have a problem with 1x1 ribbing, but this one turned out okay. And then I did a tubular bind off here, which I hadn't done before. There's a couple setup rows and then tubular bind off, and that all went very well, I think. There's several inches of ribbing here, which I think gives it kind of a high-end look. I see a lot of designer sweaters have very, very long ribbed hem sections, so I like that. One modification I did was to lower the end of the neckline, so I think naturally the neckline is like kind of a crude neckline, and I just checked Ravelry to see everybody's projects just to make sure I had a good understanding of where the neckline was is supposed to go. And then I decided to lower it by about, I think, 2 inches, because I think that's more flattering for me, and I like when things are not up near my neck. And yeah, that's just my favorite type of neckline to wear. So what I did, so how I accomplished that without ruining the pattern is that, okay, so here's the front, here's the left front, and here is where the center front will be. So here's like the end of the neckline, here's the curve here, the half. So what I did was I knit 8 more rows before starting the increases for the neckline, and I decided to do 8 rows because based on my swatch, 8 rows was about 2 inches or whatever amount I had decided to lower the neckline. In addition, I also changed the rate of increases. So what I did to figure that out was something I learned when I was learning some machine knitting classes online. And it's a method that's used pretty often when you're doing calculations for necklines and sleeve shaping, shoulder slopes, I mean. And it's to make like a little graph paper of how many increases per row to get where you want to be. So for example, if the saddle shoulder is starting here and you want to increase maybe every other row to get to the center front opening. So let's say this pink line was the original. I wanted mine to end here. So I just figured out a nice slope shape and whatever increases I wanted to get to this point, but having it be way down here. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I did to figure out the new neckline. And I guess we won't exactly know how it's going to turn out until I do the ribbing around the neck and the button bands and all that. So that's what I did, and we'll see if it works out. So the pattern, the braid here is very easy, just a simple braid. The texture here is just a 2-row pattern repeat that you can easily memorize in 1 second. And I don't find this texture to be too annoying to knit. It doesn't hurt my hands, and I'm not getting bored of it, which is good because there is a lot of it. It's probably 3 times slower than knitting regular stockinette, so keep that in mind if you want to make this one. What you could do is, well, when you make the swatch is made in this pattern, so you'll see very quickly if this is something you want to repeat a million times or not. I am very lazy when it comes to swatches, so I just did very, very little just to get the width of my gauge, and then I tied it together as a bracelet for one of my girls because she said she wanted it, and she never wore it, but whatever. So besides the neckline, I haven't made any modifications at all to the length of the body or anything like that. Right now I am on the first sleeve, which, you know, I hate sleeves, but this is not so bad because in the pattern, pretty much every row is different. Like you're not just given some simple instructions for the sleeve and then you're off to the races. You kind of have to read every single line of the pattern as you go. So that's kind of fun, but also it's not really a project I could take with me on the go because there's a lot of reading involved, and I have a piece of paper that just has tons and tons of notes and row counts and all this stuff going on. But it's not too hard if you just have to pay attention a little bit. It's not hard at all. So what I love about the saddle shoulder is that this line, this braid here that starts at the neck is going to continue all the way down the sleeve until the hem, I think. I haven't read too far ahead, but it probably stops right when the sleeve ribbing hem begins. So I'm about this much done with the sleeve, and maybe I'm halfway there, I'm not sure. But the fit is great so far. I'm making the 3rd size, and I have a 92 centimeter or 36 inch bust. And the size 3 seems to be fitting well so far. Of course, it's hard to try on until you have the button band and all that going on, but This is kind of an oversized fit, so I'm not expecting any problems at all. So this sweater is, oh, let me try it on, sorry. Oh, okay, I'm more than halfway done with the sleeve maybe, nice. And I love doing ribbing, so hopefully it has a nice long cuff there. Anyways, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I also marked the center front where the increases end with 2 little stitch markers just in case I wasn't able to find it. So here you can kind of see how much lower the neckline will be before the neckband. So the neckband probably will take it up into this section. And so the original sweater was maybe stopped here. See, I think that's about 2 inches. So yeah, we'll see if that works out. So this sweater is listed as an advanced knit, and in case you're intimidated to do this, I just wanted to say I don't think it's too bad at all. It's the pattern is really, really well written. There's no pictures, but it's pretty much a hand holding type of pattern. It really guides you every step of the way. The pattern is broken down into very palatable bite-sized chunks. So first you do the saddle shoulders. Then when you finish that, then you do the picking up stitches and you knit the back flat. Then you pick up stitches and knit the front flat. Then you pick up more stitches and do the sleeve. So it's all I think it's all very, very doable. And this pattern, the overall textured pattern, is very simple. So if you know how to knit and cast off, then this texture pattern will be very easy for you. And this is just a simple cable braid in case you've never done cables before. This is definitely one of the easier ones. You don't have to do something on every row. It's like every 4 or 5 rows, I think. So there's a lot of not cabling in this beautiful cable pattern. And I would say the overall effect of this sweater is much more impressive and much easier than it looks. So don't be afraid, don't be intimidated. I think the instructions are really well written, and definitely give it a go if you like how this looks, because if you really want to make something, I think that is the motivation that you need sometimes to learn something new. Oh, one thing that I saw that's coming up is that there's going to be some crocheted button loops, which look really cute. I've never done that type of button closure before, so I'm excited about that. And I have a couple of button options and I have no idea what I'm going to choose, so I'm just going to throw them up on the screen here. And if you have any suggestions, or I would love to know your opinion, which button you think I should choose, because I'm having a tough time deciding. Luckily I don't have to decide for a little while, but the one I'm leaning towards is a warm creamy button, and I only have 3 of those. So do you think I think the original pattern wants 5 buttons. Do you think I could get away with 3, or do you think I should just pick like one of those white buttons where I have plenty of? Let me know what you think, because I'm having a lot of trouble deciding. Thank you! So the yarn I'm using for this is called Sheer Wellscroft Dorset, and this is from Harrisville Designs, which is kind of close to me here in New Hampshire. And this is the most beautiful yarn. I know I say this a lot, but this one is really amazing and soft. And I think these sheep were raised in Harrisville, New Hampshire. And this yarn comes in 4 different shades, and each shade is an undyed yarn. So it's all the natural shades of the sheep, which I think is just really amazing. This is a woolen spun yarn, which I'm not sure I've worked with before, but it's really nice, kind of has a low twist situation here, but it still is strong and sturdy, and you don't have to really worry about accidentally breaking the yarn or anything. The shade I'm using is called Hen of the Woods, and it's mostly gray, but there's also some brown and white tweedy flecks going on in there. So the yarn is really stretchy and bouncy and round and plump, and so squishy and very, very soft. They said that the sheep that produce this wool is a meat breed of sheep, but that the yarn they produce is among the softest of the meat breeds, and I definitely can attest to that. It's really soft, Yep, even by your neck. It's a non-superwash wool, but it's very, very soft. So I got all the yarn for this cardigan during a Black Friday sale. I think they had like 15% off, and I think I have enough yarn, hopefully. I've been having a problem lately where I'm running out of yarn, but I think I actually have enough this time. And yeah, I just love this yarn so much. It works up quickly, and I'm just trying to think what next project can I work on in an Aran weight yarn so I can use one of their other colorways. Okay, next up I wanted to introduce you to my new little buddy. This is a free pattern by Claire Garland, and I think it's just called Lamb. And this is the most adorable little creature I've ever made. I say this about whichever one I've most recently finished, but this one really is so cute. And this was made in Isair boucle yarn, which I've always wanted to try a boucle yarn because I saw some pattern by Nordgard, I believe it's called, and I think the sweater is called Winter Boho. I'll put a picture here. But that one is made in Isair boucle held doubles, so I thought I would just buy one ball of the boucle and see how I liked it before committing to like an entire sweater. Anyways, the yarn is amazing. It's 100% alpaca and it's very, very soft. Claire Garland's pattern suggested that you use a drops boucle, and I think the drops version has a lot more loops. So I think if I made this lamb again, I would actually go for the drops because it's even loopier and even more textured than this one, where the loops they're kind of small and understated. So for the body of this, Claire Garland said to hold one strand of the boucle with some other fingering weight yarn, and I actually held the 2 strands of boucle double just because I noticed this was not the most pronounced boucle and I really wanted to give it that extra texture. So I did hold it double for the entire body, and then in the darker areas you hold 2 yarns together. I think I just used, see this kind of grayish, or I don't know, taupey leg here. I held the boucle with some scrap yarn I had from my Wildnis sweater, and just some, I think this dark brown here is just some random drops brown alpaca, and a little bit of scrap pink here for the little nose. And my girls love it when the toys have a smile, so I always include a little smile so that they look happy and not too angry. So I didn't even use one full ball of this, which is great. Maybe I'll make another one and I'll just use 1 strand of the boucle and smaller needles and make a little mini version. I think that would be so cute. And this is a great stash buster for any other fingering weight yarn that you have. This was made on 3.75 millimeter needles, and it was knitted flat. Luckily, I hate knitting toys in the round. It's just so awful. It's like sleeves, but much, much worse. And some sections were knit on 3.5 millimeter needles, like I think maybe the ear and maybe the little hooves. I've already forgotten, but mostly it's on 3.75. But toys are super forgiving. You can use any yarn you want, any gauge. I don't even gauge swatch. And so yeah, I dropped everything I was doing and I just had to make this lamb a couple weeks ago, and it turned out really well. So as I mentioned, you knit it flat. You start at the nose and then you knit her entire back flat up until the tail, and not the legs yet, those are knitted separately. Then you knit another piece that is flat, that's the entire belly side, and the belly is much more narrow. And then you seam them up, and I think the legs are all knitted separately, I think, and then sewn on at the end. And little tail, you don't have to stuff that little tail. And then there's some pink on the inside of her ears. And one tip I have for toys, since I've made a lot, is to understuff them. An overstuffed toy just looks really bad, and an understuffed toy is really lifelike and will maintain a lot of movement, which I think is adorable. One thing I usually do is I stuff the head quite firmly because usually there's a lot of shaping that goes on in the cheeks and the muzzle and the forehead area. So that I do stuff firmly, and for this pattern in particular, she said to make sure to stuff this little ridge up here. And after I put in the safety eyes, I take some yarn and I just thread it through like a line in between the eyes, and I pull this section in like this, and that gives it a really lifelike shape as well. And yeah, can't recommend this pattern enough, and it's free, so win-win there. And it's a nice large size too, and she can sit up like this. I think she can pose kind of okay. Yeah, if you stuff the legs a little more firmly, she can sit up better, stand up better. You can always put in some armature wire if you want her to be super movable. But yeah, this is, oh, and we named her Rogan Josh, which is kind of unfortunate for her because that Rogan Josh is a lamb curry that I like to cook, but don't worry, we won't be cooking her. Okay, I think I'll go to my next finished object, which is what I'm wearing today. This is the Monday sweater by Petite Knit. It's probably one of her most popular patterns, and I haven't knit any of her adult-sized sweaters yet. I did make the Ingrid baby sweater, which had major sizing issues, so I wasn't like that excited to knit another one of her patterns just yet, but I did have a severe craving for a summery sweater because you know how there's a lot of snowflake designs and other winter motifs in sweaters, and I feel like there's a lack of tropics. There's a lack of tropical motifs in sweaters, so I just probably came up with this while dreaming one night. I just needed a giant palm tree on a sweater, so I picked the Monday sweater because it's a raglan shape, which I think is flattering, and I know how to knit that style. And then I went on Stitch Fiddle, and after a couple hours came up with this palm tree design, which I think turned out really well. It's exactly what I was picturing. Maybe the sleeves are a little short, I could probably block them longer, but it's a very functional length for cooking. I did lengthen the sleeves 3 inches, and the cuff was like even more than 4 inches, but I think I only did 3 inches for the cuff. So overall I knit the sleeves 2 inches longer, I think, and they could be a little longer, but I think this kind of like bracelet length is fine. And I used the knitting machine to help me finish this one as well. So I will be sharing this palm tree colorwork chart for free if you want. There's a link to the Stitch Fiddle file I created down in the description box. And if you could give me a follow on Instagram and on YouTube in exchange for the free chart, I would love that if you have time. Anyways, so yeah, it took me a few hours to make this in Stitch Fiddle, and this sweater is knit in Knitting for Olive Merino. It's their undyed white color, and the green is called Dark Olive, and the brown shade is called Nut Brown. And yeah, I think this turned out perfectly. It was exactly what I envisioned. I made the 3rd size. It could have been a little more oversized, but it has a perfectly fine fit, I think. But if it was oversized, I would probably like it even more. Well, actually, I don't know, because I was planning just to wear this as a casual kind of thing, just throw on with jeans. And there's definitely a lot of positive ease in the body, and then I was kind of scared about the sleeves because I heard Petite Knit patterns run really small in the sleeves, but this has maybe 4 inches of positive ease here, which is fine with me, super comfortable. I think this would be a great pattern for a beginner, minus this motif here. I think the Monday sweater was well written, and be careful about the sleeve length though. I'm not sure what was going on there. I had to add 2 inches for that. So what I did was I started this knitting by hand. I think I used size, 4mm needles. Oops, I forgot to mention that I held, instead of a silk mohair that she asks you to pair with this, the Knitting for Olive Merino, instead of a silk mohair, I used a cashmere lace weight yarn that I got from Color Mart in like a giant cone to use with my knitting machine. And so I calculated if that saved me any money compared to if I had bought the full amount of the silk mohair, and it saved me like $8 to do that. And I didn't really want another mohair sweater, I just wanted like a regular sweater, but this turned out super soft. Merino plus the lace weight cashmere is incredible, and it bloomed and poofed up really, really well. After I blocked it, the ribbing got a lot better. The color work here evened out a little bit. It's kind of wonky still, but so anyways, I knit the whole thing by hand up until the very bottom of the tree. And I guess I probably stopped hand knitting the sleeves, I think probably around here. And then I did the rest on machine. But let me talk about what I did to do this motif. I think maybe I did intarsia. I never looked up what intarsia is, but I did a combination of intarsia and just like cutting the yarn after every row and restarting it. So in the beginning, I would knit one row, and this was knit in the round. So after one row, I had to bring the yarn back to start again on this side to knit the next row. And I tried to do that as loosely as possible, but still, you can probably see there is a bit of tugging and pulling here, which I'm okay with. If you've seen my other videos, I'm really not picky about imperfections, and if there's giant mistakes, I pretty much don't care, either out of laziness or just because, I don't know. I just don't really care if there's giant mistakes. And this is kind of, you know, it's a casual knit, kind of slubby texture, and yeah, from far away I think it still looks fine. So I was doing the carry it back to the beginning technique for maybe the first half of the tree. There's several rows where you have 3 colors going on, but the trunk is just right here, so it's not that bad. And then down here, I decided it was pulling too much, so I decided to cut the yarn after every row and restart it. And that looks a lot neater to me. Like down here, there's much less pulling on the white part of the fabric. But I'm sure maybe there's a better way to do that type of thing, and maybe I should have looked into what intarsia is, just in case there was something better I could have learned there. But overall, yeah, it turned out great. So anyways, after the end of the tree trunk, I decided to knit the rest of the body on the knitting machine, and I had to do several gauge swatches of this yarn. I think I did probably 4 or 5 different swatches to try to get the exact match. And the way I ended up doing it was by using every other needle on the machine and then turning the tension to 8, and that replicated my hand knitting fabric the best. So the only problem is using every other needle meant that I was going to have to split the body into, into 4 sections, because the total amount of stitches was way more than I could fit on the knitting machine. The knitting machine has 200 needles, and I think the body must have been more than 400 stitches. So what I did was I did one big front panel about like this width, 2 kind of smaller side panels just here at the sides. That's probably 40 stitches or so. So one's a narrow side panel here, narrow side panel here, and then one big back panel as big as I could stretch it on the machine. And that worked out pretty well. You can kind of tell the seam at the front, but it's all the way down here. And like I said, that type of thing doesn't bother me at all. It kind of looks fine. And then I just seamed it all up at the end as invisibly as I could. And then for the sleeves were much easier. I knit them flat instead of in the round, of course, because knitting machines are knit flat. And so when I started the sleeves on the knitting machine, they were kind of circular and I had to make them flat. But to stretch it all flat on the machine is impossible, so I had to just cast on maybe 15 stitches because I couldn't quite reach those last few stitches to put them on the machine. So what I had to do was just cast on some fresh stitches and then graft them in the back here, you can see. Graft them to where the hand knitting portion was originally. So not too bad, and I made sure that all that grafting happened at the back, and I did that on both sides. Then I knit the whole sleeve flat, and I took it off the machine before the ribbing, and then I did the knitting by the ribbing by hand. And I did a twisted rib because I love twisted rib, and then seamed the sleeve up there. And I did twisted rib for the collar, the neckband, and the bottom hem. The bottom hem I shortened a significant amount because when I tried it on I thought it was long enough. So I just did 1 inch on the bottom hem there, and I think it called for maybe, I don't remember, but much more than 1 inch. So that's my Monday sweater by Petite Knit. Okay, my room's getting really cold now, so I just threw on this blanket thing that I made on the knitting machine a couple months ago. Anyways, let's go on to my next 2 finished objects. Are very, very summery because I'm tired of winter already, and I thought I want to get excited for summer by making this dress I've been planning for a while. So first I'll talk about the bag that I made to go with the dress because that is so cute. This is Crochet. It's the Riviera bag by Suzanne Mueller. And what can I say about this? A very simple crocheted bag. I've never made a bag in crochet before. I actually haven't crocheted much in the past several years because it really hurts my hands, but a little project like this was totally fine. I'm just looking at my notes here. The yarn was Rerum Natura Antigone in the color Mordore. I think that's in French, which I cannot pronounce French words for whatever reason, so I'm not even going to try. Sorry about that. But it's a beautiful 100% linen yarn, and the linen, they said, is grown in France. I'm just so surprised by how soft this linen is because I sew with linen a lot, so I know how itchy and kind of pokey those fibers can be, but that is definitely not the case with this very high quality linen yarn. I would definitely buy this yarn again. It's so soft that if I didn't know any better, I would think this was a cotton. So this is like a little weekend project. I think this took me 3 days maybe. And I crocheted this on a size, let's see what size hook. So I used a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook for this. And the bag in the photos is a lot larger than this because I used a much thinner yarn, and I actually wanted like I wanted a small little purse size, not like a giant carry-all type of bag. I wanted like a little purse for going out in the evenings. So you start it here at the bottom and you just crochet in the round in a single crochet until about here, and you do some increases on either side so it creates a nice oval shape, and then you start the overall textured pattern here, which is so beautiful. It's kind of a pulled up stitch type of pattern. So as long as you are okay with reading your crochet and figuring out where to pull up a stitch, this pattern is not too hard, but it's definitely not as easy as just doing single and double crochet, where it's really easy to see which stitch is coming up next and where to insert your hook. And then there's a really cool way to make these straps. They're kind of integrated with the last couple of rows at the top here. And these are just chained straps that you then do some other crochet stitches into to make them a little bit thicker and sturdier. And yeah, I just love how this turned out. It's exactly what I was picturing. I wear a lot of white in summer, and I think this paired with any white dress or top and bottom would look great. I do have a little bit left over of that yarn here. You can see what a beautiful shade that is. I was thinking maybe I could knit a little interior pouch in there, not knit, crochet, or I guess I could knit on the knitting machine a little square pouch, and maybe I was thinking about getting some snap buttons so that the top can close. So just some ideas about what to do with this yarn, or I could get another shade of this maybe in white and make a little tank top and have this as an accent color at the neckline or something. That could be pretty cool. Oh, one thing I love about linen, and this is true in sewing as well, is that you can iron this into any shape you want. So I almost quit this project after the first day because it was looking so wonky here at the bottom, and it wasn't sitting nicely here for like the body, the main portion of the bag. And then the straps were totally twisted, and if I have some footage, I'll just put that in here. But I was able to steam this perfectly into place, and I put the edge like this and steamed it like this so that it would actually have a flat bottom, and that worked out perfectly. So don't worry if you're working with linen and it's looking a little bit weird. You can just steam it into submission, no problem. Just make sure to use the highest setting and put a little cloth in between the iron and your work so that if it's too hot, your precious work won't get burnt. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Now let me show you the dress I made to go with it. This is the Nelly dress by My Keeper Patterns or My Keeper Sewing or something. And this is made in Merchant and Mills. It's an eyelet, they call it eyelet Indian cotton, I believe, and it's a beautiful embroidery on glace type of texture, and there's many different motifs within just one panel, so it looks like you've done a lot more than you have. So here you can see there's all sorts of different panels. I think maybe there's just 2 panels that is repeated across the width of the fabric. And I made the UK size 12, I believe, and that fit very well. I did modify the neckline a lot because, as you know, I don't like things up near my neck. I wanted a nice scoop neck, so I did that alteration, which I just cut up the pattern pieces. It was no big deal. I just measured how far low, and then I just drew a nice curve in the pattern piece and cut that out, and that turned out really well. And the reason I wanted to make this dress was because of this cool open back style. So it looks like you can still wear a bra. This is the back of the dress now, but still have nice ventilation in the summer. It gets really hot here in the summer. So I thought this would be a very classy and mom appropriate way to have some cutouts in your outfit without being too revealing, if you know what I mean. And so you make the top separately from the skirt, and the skirt is all elasticized as well, which is nice. And then at the very end, you kind of put the top overlapping the skirt by about 1 inch, and then you sew that together. That part was pretty tricky because I just didn't understand the instructions to do it. The rest of the pattern was really well written and had lots of nice pictures. But when it came to combining the top and the bottom and overlapping them, because they both have some gathering and elastic, I didn't know exactly where to place it. And that could be just me like not understanding. But that was a little bit tricky. I just made my best guess and I pinned it all in place before I sewed it just to make sure it was gonna look good. And in the original pattern, she has a piece of fabric that you thread through this big channel here at the bottom of the blouse part, and then you can cinch in those ties at either side to make this as narrow or as wide as you want. And I didn't want to waste the fabric to make those ties, so I just put in some elastic here to have the same effect, and then but it's permanent, so I just decided how far in I want it gathered, and then I sewed that elastic down. If I have any extra fabric, maybe I do have some extra fabric, but I wanted to do something else with it. So I have a teeny bit of extra fabric. Oh, maybe it's not so teeny. This looks like kind of a lot. Oh, excellent. Okay, so I really wanted to make a pair of rosary shorts out of the rest of the fabric. It looks like I might have enough. Rosary Apparel, who also has a great YouTube channel here, has a free boxer short type of pattern, just like an elasticated casual shorts pattern with pockets. And I really want to make that as like a bathing suit cover up, or just like a really nice summery, beachy, or even a pajama short. Or I think she even calls them pajama shorts. Okay. Well, anyways, I want to try to make those shorts out of the rest of my scrap fabric. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this fabric is totally see-through, and I did not line it at the bottom because I have some nude shorts I can wear under this. And then the top is lined with some cotton lawn, or maybe cotton voile fabric that I had. I just had an old nightgown that was kind of too beyond repair, so I just cut that up and used that as the lining to this dress, and that worked out perfectly. It's so invisible that I totally forgot I had lined it. Actually, I finished this like 3 weeks ago maybe. And I think that's all I have to say about that. It's pretty beginner friendly, apart from combining this section here. But yeah, it's a great pattern. I would make that again for sure, maybe with a V-neck or some other neckline, just to keep things interesting. And I'll show you the full outfit, and yeah, I just have to wait 5 more months until I can wear this. If you've seen some of my other videos, you might have noticed that I like to knit winter things in the summer and summer things in the winter. Okay, the next thing I have to show you is another one of my knitting whips. I teased this one in episode 11 a little bit because I had made a little test swatch that looked like this, and I got a I asked if anyone wanted to guess what this was, but this does not look as good as my final product, in my opinion, hopefully. Someone guessed it was a mirror or a spoon, which I really liked. I thought this would be a really good idea if someone in your family likes to cook. You could do like a fork, knife, and spoon type of cabled sweater. I think that would be really cool. But that's not what it is. It's actually a tennis racket. So this is what I'm working on right now. This is a self-drafted cardigan, and I'm gonna call this my tennis cardigan. So basically, I wanted to make a cabled cardigan because that seems like the thing to do in winter, but none of the cardigans I really wanted to make because a lot of them have a diamond motif, which I don't know, I just didn't want to do for whatever reason. And I decided, why don't I make like a tennis racket inspired cable? So that's what I did. I did some experimenting you saw in the swatch, and I came up with 2 different tennis racket designs here. One's a little bit bigger. One's a little bit bigger here with like a moss stitch on the inside. And then one's a little bit smaller, and it has like yarn over knit together holes on the inside. I think that one looks pretty realistic. This isn't blocked or anything, so I don't know how much this really looks like tennis rackets, but it's happening either way. The reason for this is because I've been playing tennis my whole life. My dad was a professional, and he taught me how to play when I was like 4 or 5. Or I'm not sure, I don't even remember, but pretty much everyone in my family loves to play tennis. So it's a big part of our life, and so that's why I wanted to make a tennis-inspired pattern. And let's see what else. I have this section here is like the chain link fence that surrounds the tennis courts. And then I put some baubles here, and those represent the tennis balls. So yeah, it's just like kind of a fun pattern. I really enjoyed designing this, and knitting on it's really fun. And I'm doing this, I'm knitting this bottom up with a steek in the middle because that's my favorite way to make cardigans. So here's the steek on either side of the tennis ball section, you can see. And I think I put another, just put another little twist cable here. And then in the center back there was some empty space, so I decided to just put a nice giant cable there just to get rid of my cable itch that I had. So yeah, it's going pretty well. I'm almost up to the armpits, and I don't know what I'm gonna do for the sleeves yet, so I have to figure that out. I'll probably put some tennis balls, rackets, and then maybe figure out a way to make a net, because I don't have the net or the cord itself represented here. I don't really know how to do that, but if you have any ideas of a knitting stitch that kind of looks like a net, let me know below and I will investigate that. Thank you. In the front, I've already planned where I'm gonna put the pockets. So I like when the pocket is totally invisible. It's gonna be behind this area here. So I just cast off, I think, 42 stitches here where I wanted the top of the pocket to be, and then on the next row I cast on 42 stitches. And I'll probably do like some type of edging here to make this look better, neater, and lie flatter. So yeah, the pocket will go all the way down to the ribbed hem here, because I like a nice big pocket, and I measured my phone to make sure it would fit, of course. And I love twisted rib, so I did several inches of twisted rib here at the bottom, and I'll probably do the same on maybe the button band and the neckline and the sleeve cuffs. What else can I say? That's pretty much it. It took me so many hours in Stitch Fiddle to come up with this design. I was just playing around for hours and hours, and I thought that was really fun. And I think at the end, if anyone's interested, I will give out all my charts for free if you want on Stitch Fiddle. Maybe it won't be like a pattern with different sizes or anything, but maybe I can share all the charts and kind of write up a little recipe in case you want to try to make your own with your own yarn and gauge and whatever. I can at least share the charts and maybe the recipe about how it was made, because I'm not going to get into sizing and test knitting and doing like real pattern stuff. That's so much work. But in case you're interested, just let me know and I'll be sure to take really good notes in case I need to share this with anyone in the future. Let me talk about the yarn I used, because this is another amazing non-superwash soft yarn that I discovered recently. Okay, this is all I have of my 4th ball, and I know I'm definitely gonna run out of yarn for this. I only have 6, I got 6 skeins total, and I think this is my 4th one. But I'm just waiting for it to go on sale again, because I originally got it. Okay, so the yarn right now is like $24 per skein, and I got it on sale maybe 2 or 3 months ago for only $16 a skein. So now it feels really bad if I buy 2 more at full price. I don't know, I'm just trying to wait and see if there's a sale, wait till the last second, and hopefully they won't run out. But this is called, this is Ba Ram U Wood Note DK. And this is the color Hair. It's an off-white, kind of a warm beige white, and I think this is such a beautiful color. I actually got this shade when I was a lot more tan, and it looked really good. Now I'm too pale because it's winter. So I'm sure it'll still look good, but it looked even better when I had a tan before, so maybe, yeah, we'll see how that works out. So this is a DK weight yarn. This comes in 100 gram skeins, and the reason it's so soft is because it's 34% BFL, 33% Masham, and 33% Merino. And yeah, it is so soft. Yeah, you could wear this on your neck even if you're sensitive, I think. It comes in maybe 7 different colors. There's like a beautiful dark green color, I remember. And I think a nice yellowy golden yellow type of shade too. I'm using 4mm needles for my cardigan, which is what it recommends that you use with it. I never even washed my little swatch, but I can't imagine it getting any better, but I'm sure it's gonna get even softer and plumper after I wash and block this. And it has like an okay amount of drape. Since it's a cardigan, I want it a little stiffer, so I would say this is somewhere in between a stiff and drapey. Well, maybe. So yeah, we'll see. I'm really into the knitting on my Beatrix cardigan right now, so I'm probably gonna finish that, then return back to this. So yeah, we'll see. This is kind of a long-term whip probably because of all the designing that has to go into it, but we'll see how far I get in my next episode. Okay, I'm on my last finished object, best for last maybe. This is, you might, if you saw my last episode where, ooh, this is so soft. So in my last episode, I included this at the very end, my last make of 2024. It's a ski sweater I made for my husband out of Knitting for Olive Merino. Where's the little skier? Oh, there he is. So I wanted to make my husband a cutesy little ski sweater. So I went online and I was just Googling vintage ski sweaters to get inspiration because I knew I was going to design it myself and make it on the knitting machine to make it go faster. And I found this really beautiful one by Pendleton, and it's pretty much, yeah, I pretty much copied it as best I could. There's a lot more trees in the original, but the duplicate stitch I did for the trees was so annoying and took so long, and I don't even think it looks that good. Definitely kind of sloppy, although that kind of adds to the realistic tree effect. And then I only did one skier because that was really hard as well. But overall, I think it turned out really well, and he's worn it a lot since. I think 'cause it's merino and it's a lot softer than the other sweater I made him. So after I decided I wanted to copy that design, I started doing some swatches on the knitting machine, and I made my own punch card in like a snowflake design, and here's my first swatch of that. And if you can see, there's a lot of drop stitches here because there are really long floats, and sometimes the knitting machine will just drop a stitch if the float is too long. So I added some more holes into the punch card pattern that I made to get rid of the long floats. So every hole that you make in the punch card is where your contrast color is going to appear. So I just needed more of the contrast color to make less floats. So I tried to have no rows with floats longer than, I think, maybe 5 or 6 stitches. I can't remember now. And then I deleted all of the rows that were just black only because that is annoying to do on the knitting machine. It's better if every row has at least 2 colors. And here you see the swatch looks pretty good, no stitches dropped, so I went ahead with this punch card. And I cast on some waste yarn onto the machine and then started up the color work right away. So I knit the front panel and the back panel separately from the top down. So starting with the color work. So on the machine it'll look like this by the time you finish all the color work at the bottom, and then the body at the top, and at the end of the body I did a double folded over hem. So to do that, I transfer every other stitch to the next door needle so that every other stitch is loaded up, so there's like a slip stitch in between all the knit stitches, and that creates a mock ribbed effect since I don't have a ribber on my knitting machine. And then I turn the tension down a little bit, and then I knit probably like 40 rows and then turned that whole ribbing section in on itself, and then bound it off back up at the top where the ribbing started. And then that created this double folded hem here that looks very neat. I'm really happy that turned out well. And so that's how the body was made. And the sleeves are just a rectangle because drop shoulder is super easy to do on the knitting machine. And the blue motif is just the same motif from up here. I just did one repeat. And I wish I had done that at the bottom, put a little blue here. I was planning to, I just forgot. I was too focused on everything else that was happening probably. I did the same double folded mock rib here at the hem of this sleeve, And yeah, these are knitted flat and then seamed up the side. I seam the side seams together. And then for the neckline, I did a cut neckline. So I showed, so one person was really interested in how I was gonna cut and sew the neckline to this white tennis sweater I was making on the machine a couple episodes ago. And I kind of stopped working on that project, but I did show how I was gonna do the neckline in case that person wants to see it. But actually it's a good demonstration for how I did this, because it's kind of hard to see on this black yarn here. So what I did was I just marked out where I wanted the neckline to be, not including the ribbing, so not the final neckline, but the neckline before the ribbing. And I used a needle and thread to mark out the exact neckline, and then I took it over to my sewing machine and sewed a line right above where I had marked it out, just to keep all the stitches in place so that when I cut it, it doesn't all unravel. And then I did cut it and everything was fine. And then to make the neck ribbing, I measured the circumference of the full neck to see how long to make the ribbing, and I just made a big strip of ribbing separate from the sweater entirely. Then I folded it in on itself and steamed it so it was laying nice and flat. And then I just sewed that onto the neckline, and I made sure to encompass the raw edge sandwiched in between the two sides of the folded over neckband. And hopefully that all makes sense. And what else? Okay, yep, and then for the mountains and the trees, I just did duplicate stitch in a white yarn. And when you're doing duplicate stitch, you're not supposed to use a thicker yarn, which I kind of wanted to do until I read that you shouldn't do that because it will make everything else stretch out. You should use the exact same yarn and the exact same weight if you can to do the duplicate stitch, which I did. And then for the little skier, I just did my best to do some embroidery work to make it look, I think it looks like a skier. On the original sweater, it looks like an iron transfer piece, like super realistic. So I just did my best with duplicate stitch to give the effect of a skier, and it turned out really well, fits him well. To get his measurements, I just took one of his favorite sweaters that was also a drop shoulder, like same exact construction, and I took all the measurements there and then based on my gauge swatch, I figured out how many stitches to cast on, how long to make it, and all that kind of thing. There's one last thing I want to share, which is my latest Facebook Marketplace score. So if you've seen some of my earlier episodes, you might know I live in a really old house built in 1895, and I love antique furniture and going to antique fairs like the Brimfield one here in Massachusetts that runs 3 times a year. So anyways, I had been on the lookout for about a year for an old bookcase where I could put all of my knitted items on display really nicely, and finally something came up on Facebook Marketplace for a real steal, and I'll show you it here. I've loaded up all my knits here at the bottom, and at the top I have some of my little knitted toys. And every time I walk past this, I just get a huge smile on my face, and it's really nice to just see all my hard work in one place. And it really brightens up this little hallway here. And yeah, like I said, I was on the lookout for this for months and months until I finally found it, which is kind of how antique furniture works sometimes. You just have to be patient and wait for something to eventually come along. But luckily here in Massachusetts, there's a lot of old houses and old furniture, so if you just wait long enough, I usually find something pretty good eventually. I was kind of trying to find one with glass doors to keep bugs and stuff out of my wool, but I just like this one so much, so I just loaded it up with little cedar pieces of wood, so hopefully, I've never had a moth problem here, and hopefully we never will. So thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, I would love if you subscribed, if you want to see more videos like this, and give this a thumbs up if you liked it, and follow me on Instagram if you have time, and leave me a comment, any questions you might have, something I missed, or just let me know where you're from in the world and what you're knitting on. Thank you again so much for watching. Have a great weekend. Bye.